Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth, the curly-haired country gal, and I'm really excited to be joining the Inquisitive Farm Wife and the Mennonite Farmhouse in their collaboration on one of my favorite things, which is dairy, and more specifically, raw milk. Now, when I think of raw milk, the first thing that comes to mind is
It's alive! It's alive!
because it really is. Raw milk is alive and it's full of awesome things for us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how our family uses raw milk, how we got to this place of using raw milk, and how you could get your own raw milk. And stick around to the end because I'm going to share a fact about raw milk that may surprise you. Now, as you can see from this realmilk.com source, raw milk has vitamin C, calcium, folate, vitamins B12, B6, A, D, B2, iron, and minerals. And as you can see on this right side, most or all of those things are either destroyed or greatly denatured in the process of pasteurization. So our family goes through 5 gallons of raw milk every week, which is a lot. But I try to pack our days with as much nutrient-dense foods as we can, and there are a few things better than raw milk. So we just drink approximately half a gallon a day. So that equates to 3.5 gallons a week. And then normally with about one of those gallons, we turn it into yogurt. So I use a culture from Cultures for Health, which I got last year. And the yogurt is more runny than you might be used to, but I'm really happy with it. It's a no heat, like zero heat yogurt. So you keep all the benefits of the raw milk. And all you do is put the starter in, you stick it in your cupboard for a couple days, more or less, depending on if it's hot or not. With more heat, it doesn't take as long. With colder weather, it takes a little longer. And then you put it in your fridge and eat it, or you can eat it, at room temperature is fine too. So often what I'll do, as I'm showing here, is when we get our milk on Sundays, when we come home from church with 5 gallons of milk, a lot of times I'll just take the cream off the top of half of a gallon. I could just mix it in, but I just take about a cup and a half out, and I get ready to make my chocolate milk, which I'll talk about in a second. And then I just go ahead and put half a cup of the starter from the yogurt in there and give it a stir. Now I have learned something very important, that you need to use a rubber spatula, not a metal spoon, because I learned the hard way that using a metal spoon stirred inside of a half-gallon jar sometimes leads to the jar breaking and milk spilling all over the kitchen. So that accounts for about 4.5 gallons of the milk that we use each week. And so either half a gallon or a gallon every week we turn into chocolate milk. And so I'm going to demonstrate here on a smaller scale, but it's really simple. I just use 1 banana, 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder, and then I put some collagen in it as well. And often I'll put raw eggs in my smoothies also, in chocolate milk. But then I blend that up, and then if I'm doing it for a half gallon, I'll just multiply that by 4. So a half-gallon jar will take 4 bananas, 4 tablespoons of cocoa, and the milk, and that's it. And it's absolutely delicious. So how did we get to this place of using raw milk? Well, it definitely didn't start that way for me. I grew up on a pretty conventional diet, and I don't fault my parents for it, but the Westonay Price Foundation, which I encourage that you look into, would call the diet that I grew up on the SAD diet, and SAD stands for the Standard American Diet, with very highly processed foods, boxed meals, not very much fresh food at all, and still the remnants of thinking that fat is bad, so low fat everything, but yet really high sugar in everything. So that's the way I grew up. But then when I married my husband, or when I was getting to know his family and then became part of the family, my mother-in-law used raw milk, so that was new. And then my sister-in-law's mother-in-law is a chapter leader for the Westonay Price Foundation. So you've probably not heard of the Westonay Price Foundation, but they do a number of things. A big part of what they do is to encourage and campaign for raw milk, but they also are very big on health choice and not necessarily injecting yourself with things that you don't want or need, as well as a high-fat diet. They follow the principles of Dr. Westonay Price, who was actually a dentist, and he traveled the world looking at the commonalities between really vibrant, healthy societies. He saw and observed what their teeth structure looked like as a dentist, and he saw these big, beautiful smiles with broad teeth, and they were straight teeth with no cavities in these underdeveloped countries, and yet here in the United States we had tons of cavity and dental decay, and he was trying to figure out why. So that led to this organization. They really encourage the use of a lot of fats and properly preparing grains by soaking them with some sort of acidic medium to break down the proteins that keep you from being able to digest it well. Pastured animals. Anyway, that's something I encourage you to look into. All that to say, my sister-in-law's mother-in-law was a chapter leader for the Westonay Price Foundation. I started going to their chapter meetings and learned a lot. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'm a chapter leader now, which doesn't really mean that much. All I have to have is a list of food that people can find locally for my area, so I have that. But it's been a 10-year journey from going from boxed meals and a sad diet to raising our own chickens and having our own bees and consuming fermented cod liver oil every day. And more recently, even grinding my own flour to make my own sourdough bread, which has been so satisfying. But it has been a 10-year journey, so just keep that in mind. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but if you weren't won over to the idea of raw milk and now you are, there are several ways to get your hands on it. First of all, of course, if you live out in the country, you could have a milk cow. That's a pretty big undertaking. That's not one that I'm quite ready for yet, but that's an option. You could also consider goat milk. I thought that I hated goat's milk, and my husband thought that he did as well, but a friend of mine, Victoria from Dreamweaver's Homestead, I was talking to her about being self-sustainable and having a cow, and she was not trying to talk me out of it, but she was helping me see, like, cows are a big thing, a big investment, a big animal, and so she's really big on goats and goat milk. So I was able to purchase some goat milk from some La Mancha goats, and it was a little bit sweeter than the cow's milk I was used to. I couldn't tell a difference. It tasted really good, and I gave a blind taste test to my husband. He couldn't really tell the difference, and he guessed that the cow's milk was the goat's milk. So that's something else you could consider. Goats are much smaller, much more easy to handle if you live out in the country, and that's a possibility. By the way, subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to follow my journey on goats, because now I actually have goats, and they're not quite what I expected. Those are two ideas, especially if you live out in the country, but if you don't, there's a couple other ways that you can get your hands on raw milk. Raw cow's milk or goat's milk, or even sheep milk for that matter. But you can go to realmilk.com, and they actually have a raw milk finder, and so you can search your state and your city to see who around you lists with them and that sells raw milk. But I actually found my local raw milk provider just by joining my local buy-sell trade group, or joining a few of them and asking, hey, who has raw milk? And I was able to get in touch with somebody who has it. If you're thinking about moving out to the country, or recently have, and this is new for you, it was new to me that some people sell raw milk like my provider, and she doesn't really advertise that much. It's a small town, people just know about her, so you kind of have to know where to ask and where to look. Now, I told you I was going to leave you with one fact that you may find surprising. Think for a second. I want you to guess how many people have died from consuming raw milk. Okay, do you have the number in your head? Well, according to realmilk.com, which I am very inclined to believe, there have been exactly 0 deaths directly related to raw milk. But there have actually been 75 deaths due to pasteurized milk. Now you might say, oh, hogwash, let me see the study. I'm sure somebody's died from raw milk. If it's not true, okay. But if it is true, doesn't that make you question the governing authorities that tell us what's good for us and what's not good for us? I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching. Bye.